So we are going to jump into the last little bit of the Elemental Chaos arc. So if you missed us last time, that was part 6. So in the last episode, we got through 4 episodes of lore because we're amazing. We saw us leaving Falway Tavar and having the ambush on the road with Kiva Flinthand. We see our first trip to the Earth elemental plane, where Callie and Kamea share a moment. We rescue Kreger for the first time, or we rescue Kreger, meeting our first Petch, and Neppy and Kokenee share a really beautiful, intense moment around Kokenee's Bible, and the implications of that. And then we get to Wolfreen. We fight our way through the city, and we end up at the docks by battling the Triton down this deep run, freeing a dragon turtle, and going towards the Temple of Cord, where we have holed up for the night. We also see Neppy and Kokenee have their first kiss on the roof, and Neppy starts teaching Kokenee Infernal so that he can translate the letter she has written for him.
We just got caught up to speed, Matt. That was just the review. I know we talked about it last week, but I cannot wait for us to call in the solid that dragon turtle owes us at some point in the future, and everybody, all the chatties, which is I guess what our fucking Chatwater followers are called, will be like, "Oh, I get that cut," and we'll be like, "Yeah."
And nobody else will understand Davin the dragon turtle. And
they'll be like, "Where the hell did this turtle come from?"
Yeah, they're like, "Why does Neppy know a turtle? Like, why does Neppy know a turtle?"
Come swim in the waters of Chatwater. It's always inviting.
It's always
dive in the deep
delightful.
But yeah, what happened next?
So we are starting at episode 23, session 23, which is the Battle of Gatestone Keep, happening April 21st, 2019. Matt, would you like to take it away, or do you want me to start?
Why don't you lead? I'll catch up.
Okay, sounds good. So in the morning, Kokenee and Neppy come down from the roof, and everyone is waiting in the main lobby of the Temple of Cord, and we begin the day with preparations for battle. We utilize a bottle of Hero's Feast potion that we had, which was a Caraxian brandy, which is actually a little bit of a throwback to our session last night, where people were like, Neppy, do you have a Hero's Feast? And I was like, nope. Because this is just port, not brandy. So we only had 4 servings of the Hero's Feast, and they were given to Callie, Kokenee, Spooky, and Kamea. And Neppy gives Yana Death Ward, and gives Callie, because Callie can also cast Revivify at this point, diamonds. Callie and Kamea kind of duck off to the side. Callie's like, I need you to be okay at the end of the day. You need to be all right, because whatever's happening here is good, and I don't want that to stop, so you need to be okay at the end of today, and that they'll figure what happening when the dust clears. We also find Hector Turnbuckle, who we had known from our dealings back in Svel N a time before. He is now back in the city. He's injured, but recuperating. So we talk to him, and he gives us a brief lay of the land. So we learned that Hector has actually been a spy for Queen Thealia, and now that the queen is dead, he is now back here in the city and is basically said, okay, this is what's happening. This is where you can go. This is your way through the city to get to the Gatestone Keep so that you can go get Zakas. There's a lot of praying that happens at this point. Typical. This is where it starts, that we're all starting to pray very early. Callie prays to Melora. Go ahead, Sean.
Oh, I just love that. It's just cool because sometimes big sessions sneak up on you. But I really do like when the characters are like, fuck, we might not make it through this. And like, I mean, we didn't even, I'm not going to go into it now, but just like, we didn't even talk about the first half of the session when everyone was just putting their affairs in order. But anyways, Callie, I just liked that. Because it's so fucking real.
It was so funny in the chat. Like, I know you brought up the word will, Sean, when we were talking about it before the intro. But we never said the word will in the first half of the session, but the chat, like, I went back through and was just skimming to like skim through the episode this morning, and the chat was like, are they writing their wills? are they getting their stuff in order? Are we watching our party walk into a TPK? And I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Yana leaving that note in her bedroom. Like, yeah. That's, I mean, I don't know for sure. I haven't talked to Jen, but that's for sure a will.
oh yeah.
Or something to that effect.
Yeah, I think we've all got them. Callie's got one. I know Neppy has some, and I know Kokenee has one. And like that conversation has been happened. So yeah, so all of us getting our affairs in order. Anyway, so we talk to our gods to get our affairs in order. Callie prays to Melora, Neppy prays to Nipthysket, and Kokenee prays to Arathis. He rolls a natural 20 on his religion
Hell
check,
yeah, dude.
and his gun starts glowing with golden runes that had never
So
glowed
religious.
before. So religious. But this was at the point where you weren't even proficient in religion.
No.
Like, you were the cleric who was not proficient in religion. So we're standing basically ready to go, and Spooky asks for our attention. And she says that she's really sorry for running away in Fawe Tavar and letting her fear get the best of her in front of the thorn gauges. And she tells us that she's not going to run anymore, that she's got us our back 100%, and she's, regardless of what happens, that she's never going to run again. So we rally around her, and we go outside.
She seems great, but anytime you guys need to get away in a hurry, she refuses. She just walks, and everyone's like, guys, we got time crunch. And she's like, no, I said no more running.
Walking away.
I hate running. Speed walk, max speed.
That's why we got her Fezzik, so you could fly her around.
Absolutely.
Exactly. It just took too long to get anywhere.
So we walk outside, and we had heard from that Torren was making his way through the city, and so we're waiting for him to arrive. So Neppy and Kokenee share this moment again before battle. Kokenee comes up and tightens the straps on her armor, and he asks her to be safe for the day. He's like, please be safe. That he needs her to be standing at the end of the day, and she's like, I need the same of you. I need that. You need to be okay at the end of the day. And they talk about Torren and how that it's also their job now to keep him safe. And Kokenee says, I'll look after him. And Neppy's like, I'll look after the rest. I will look after you and the rest. So I think it's a nice moment for them of being like, okay, we are starting, so there is something burgeoning here, but we know that there is something bigger, and we need that all to be okay, so that we can attempt to figure out what this is at some point when that happens. Matt, did you want to take it from here?
Yeah. Why don't you just go a little bit further?
Sure.
I'm just pulling. Yeah.
Got it.
I am looking through my emails.
So at
to
that
pull up yours, not
absolutely
checking your emails.
no problem. So at that moment, we hear a bunch of voices and shouting from outside, and they're like, we hear the acolytes of Cord calling that the townspeople are here. The townspeople are here. So we go outside the Temple of Cord, and we see that the townspeople of Wolfreen have risen up and are attempting to fight the elementals that have taken over their city. There's the Sawagan, the water, the earth, and the fire elementals. And for we watch the townspeople kind of fight their way towards the temple from afar. And for every one that falls, another 5 or so tend to take up the cause as they're pushing their way through the city. And at the front of the crowd, we see a human man push his way through, scaling an earth elemental and just basically 1, 2, 3 punching the shit out of it, and it cracks. And so we see
That's gotta be Torren. Gotta be Torren.
we see him
Famed puncher.
We see him wearing light silver scaled armor, a fur-lined cloak with the image of a wolf painted onto the dark green fabric, and he's wearing a helmet with the cog of Arathis on the front. And yes, it is Torren, and here he is with reinforcements. It's a wonderful reunion because we hadn't seen him in a day or two in game time, and this is him as we've never seen him before. We've seen Torren, who has been not necessarily a broken man, but a man out of place, a man who is a man out of time, and now we're seeing him where he should be, leading a group of people into battle as a soldier. So he assures us that Jar is safe with Nissa and will be arriving in the city within the next day or two, hopefully after everything is settled. Neppy gives Torren back his spear, which she had been holding, and he gives Neppy the bag of holding, which he had been traveling or holding for her. And as we do, she casts freedom of movement on him. Is like, I won't have you held down by anything today. You go and you fucking kick ass today. Neva is with us, and she departs. She's taking Andaz Silmak, the councilman, and makes their way through the city. And then it's at this point that we watch Torren scale up onto one of the pillars of the Temple of Cord on kind of like a platform. And he makes this beautiful, empowering speech to the citizens of Wolfreen, encouraging them to take back their city. And while he's doing this, he gets a vision of his family leaving Caradoc at the tail end of the Dawn War. It's probably the last time he saw them before the city fell. And of course, now we have reason to believe that they headed north to Garyang, potentially to Telekov, but obviously we didn't know that at the time. And with that, we start making our way towards the Gatestone Keep. The townspeople army are headed off one way to try and rid the city of the elementals, and we are going to go take care of Zakas, who we
Boss
know
battle time.
is boss battle time. Matt, did you find the email? You got it?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good.
So Kamea helps us break through a wind wall barrier that had been built around the city, assumedly by Zakas, the city center. And we find ourselves almost in the eye of the storm.
That
we know
giant
we're
storm that had been like swirling overhead.
I forgot about that storm. Yeah.
And we know that we're seconds away from the Gatestone. And Torren quickly pulls Neppy aside and asks her to promise that she won't bring him back to life if he falls.
Let's dial in on that moment.
Yeah.
Because that feels, I know that's significant because it's come up in stream. Em, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this was actually something that happened outside of session. So this happened the night before the night we played D&D. Adam talked to me and he's like, Torren's got to talk to Neppy. And I was like, pardon? He was like, Torren's got to talk to Neppy. I was like, okay, so we're going to do this right now. I think I was over at Adam's house playing Dungeons and Dragons with his mom and dad. And a bunch of us, which was very fun. I think, Sean, you were there. And
I remember it.
Matt, I
very
think you were
fondly.
there.
I was there,
too.
yeah.
Yeah. So that night.
The cleric with the hand. Yeah.
Yes.
Go on.
Fair, yeah.
So just before I left that night, I was just like helping him clean up. He's like, Torren's got to talk to Neppy. And I was like, okay, I guess we're doing this here. And he was basically like, don't bring me back. I'm not the choice. If I fall, it's been 2,000 years since I've seen my family, and I don't feel like I'm supposed to be here. I want you, if it comes to it, to let me go. If it's a choice, let me go. And Neppy's like, no, like, what are you talking about? Like, it's going to be fine. I'm going to look out for you. We have everything. It's going to be okay. He barely gives her a chance to respond before he just like is off. So he lays this on her and she's like, no, like, I'm going to keep my friends safe. So that's what Neppy was dealing with going into the fight. That's the thing that's on her shoulders as she walks into this battle, knowing that there is a potential that she may have to make a big decision about what happens with her friend. And that was really hard. I was driving home from Adam's house and was like reeling from that decision, being like, we're going to actually play this game tomorrow night and I may have to make that decision. Me, Emma, as Neppy, is going to have to make that decision. And I think that's, and as we'll see in a couple moments, that's a decision that Neppy still carries. 100%. Okay, go ahead, Matt. Keep going.
So after that conversation, Torren breaks off into a run towards the potential fight. We break right into the battle as Zakas has destroyed the city center with his storm and blown the front right off of Gatestone Keep. There are 4 tall pillars that pulse with power, each with a shard of a gem atop. There's a white gem, a blue gem, a red gem, and a brown gem.
One for each of the 4 elements.
Who have titans that we all remember the names of now.
No, we don't need to.
We don't need to. We just all know as a group that we all know them now.
I was so perking up for a pop quiz. Because I
No.
studied that one.
No.
There are fire salamanders, fire elementals, earth elementals, air elementals, and myrmidon, and stuff pops off.
Oh yeah.
It just the
Um,
fight just like boom, just starts. It's
Yeah.
like Tim's like, you walk in and let's all roll initiative, and we're like, we were all so nervous. There were so many snacks on my floor. We were all just like on top. We were just like all piled into different corners of my living room. Like Lennon was in my lap for some of it. Like it was a wild fight.
This would have been the first boss fight of
Yeah.
the party. Like, you know,
First-
you fought big things before, but this is like a proper. Everything's been leading up to this boss fight.
Yeah.
Neppy thinks this is her
prophecy.
Yeah.
This is the boss fight. Yeah, big snack time.
Big
Keep
snack time.
tracking.
We'd fought like big things before.
hmm
Like we had fought the dragon in Caradoc.
The
so we'd
giants
fought,
in the earth elemental plane. Like big
but this
fights.
was the first one that was both a tremendously difficult fight and deeply like sort of story build up at the same time.
A lot of narrative and mechanics were kissing. Big, heavy
Mhm.
BBEG fight, and also like Tim has been laying the groundwork of this campaign for a year.
Mhm.
We had been reeling up to this boss fight for a year. So, okay, keep going.
So we kill a bunch of the smaller elementals. However, Zakas is able to complete the ritual he was working on, and the ground around the fountain cracks and tears apart with a monstrosity pulling away the fabric of the plains. 30 feet tall and wide, the center of swirling black energy surrounded by fire, wind, earth, and water. It is this giant, monstrous elemental thing.
I'm gonna go get the mini. Matt, keep
Yeah.
going. I'm gonna go get
Yeah.
the mini.
Kokenee and Callie began to target Zakas, while Neppy, Torren, and Kamea take on the Chaos Elemental. Yana gets herself up on a building to try to get better vantage points, but comes across Syndral Doomwing.
That's that Dragonborn. Big bad Dragonborn.
It is the Dragonborn Ranger, the final agent of Zakas we'd yet to come across. And they go toe to toe on the rooftop.
Just the
Do you
two
have
of
it?
them. I do. Are you ready to see the Chaos Elemental?
Yes. Ah.
And it's like, it's wild too, because Tim bought this mini while we were out at a store, and he was like, you need to go outside. He like saw it. He was like in one corner of the store. He's like, you need to go outside. I have to buy something. I was like, what? He's like, don't ask questions. You just need to go outside. I was like, okay. And so he goes outside. He has a bag, and he's like, and I was like, what did you buy? And he's like, I can't tell you. I was like, there's like people. There's like little like shadowy people and swords inside this mini. It's ginormous compared to like a regular mini. It's awesome. I love this. My daughter calls this the Kraken, and
Aw.
she really enjoys playing with this. This one I think is it might be, it's like a WizKids mini. Yeah, well, it's not so mini. It's huge. It's one of the biggest ones we have. Okay, keep going.
So the group on the ground gets caught in a storm sphere as we keep fighting, and we realize we need to knock out the pillars that surround Zakas that seem to be allowing the Chaos Elemental to be stable here on the material plane. So basically realize that the 4 towers are running a summoning spell to lift up this creature. So Kokenee with his gun trains his gun on the shards and fires, getting the first 3 down. Every time he removes a shard and pillar, one of the limbs of the Chaos Elemental destabilizes. So we're seeing it
go ahead, man. Yeah, so it's
we're
like
seeing it come apart.
He's like firing at the like water shard, and the like water limb is just like starting to like get really volatile. So it's like, it's very clear to us that this being is super unstable. Like it should not be conglommed together, and it should not be stable. And I think this was one of the first big homebrew things that Tim did, like a huge homebrew. Like he has the stats sheet of it originally somewhere, and it's like this beautiful. He saw a picture of it and he was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna stat that out." Like, so he just like did it. It was wild. There was like some all of the elements had different attacks, and it was so hard. It was just big swirling energy. It was very, very hard.
Maybe he'll think about posting it in the Discord sometime.
Yes.
Who knows?
Yes.
So Yana then is fighting on top of the rooftop with, what's their name, Sean and Yanis?
Syndril
Doomwing.
Doomwing,
That's right.
Dragonborn Ranger
Very
from
good.
Cinderfall,
That is correct.
home of Garrett's twin larynx, screaming in my
Thank you.
Bugatti.
So as Yana is up on the rooftop with them, she gets shot by a ballista that Syndra fires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Yana's
which-
so small.
Yeah,
Ballista's so big.
It launches her off of the building that she is standing on, and in that
Hilarious.
moment, Syndril jumps down and tries to escape. At this point, Spooky manages to kill her with Toll the Dead.
So Spooky, with a giant ballista in her shoulder, almost pinned to the ground, reaches out and casts Toll the Dead and just rocks Syndril, and Syndril just falls down dead. It was spooky. Yeah, it was wild. Yeah. It was
Did someone have to help her down? Like, was she like feet dangling, pinned against the? Oh, she's against the ground.
She got pinned, essentially almost pinned to the ground. Like she's like down, carrying the weight of this ballista in her shoulder. Yeah, it's.
And I remember when we're fighting at this point, Tim's got like all of his minis set up, and he's got like the building and the little ballista mini, and Jen's accidentally moved her character like in front of it, but didn't really think of it as
right
being
in front of the ballista.
Didn't think of the ballista as being like a usable thing in the fight. And Tim's like, so they use the ballista, and all of a sudden we all realize that she's just standing right in front of it, and we're like, oh no.
Because also none of us can see that they're fighting each other on the roof, because we're all on the ground. Callie's the only one who can see because she's up in the air. She's got her wings up fighting Zakas, and everyone else is down on the ground at this point. So all we see is like Spooky's climbed up on this building to try and get a better vantage point, and then we just see her rocketed off by a ballista, and this dragonborn jumped down, and we're all like, "Oh fuck, what's happening?" Yeah, it was intense.
Yeah. So in the last moments of the fight, Kokenee is struggling to remove the last fire shard. I remember there was like a storm sphere going on, and so shooting through it was with disadvantage. And so I remember taking so many shots at this thing and all of them just missing. This was before I was enough cleric to give myself a +10 to hit stuff. So it was just like
you were just like baby level 1, maybe level 2 cleric at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So fine. At this point, Callie, who is fighting with Zakas, cuts him down midair and drives him down to the ground. Just as Kokenee finally is able to hit the last shot and take the last shard out. As Zakas dies and the shards are broken, the Chaos Elemental turns volatile. As we try to shield ourselves, it explodes and we're thrown and take big damage.
Yeah, the whole thing just, Tim, he was like, you watch as it kind of starts to collapse out on itself, and it looks like it's going to collapse in, and then everything just like, just explodes out, and it was like 100-foot radius. Like everything gets hit.
The other thing, like up until this part of the fight, was that like of this fight that was so difficult was the storm sphere made everybody move at half speed.
Yeah.
And it was this huge spread out fight. So Kokenee was like 45 feet from anybody else.
Yeah.
And so it was just like, I can't get anywhere without like 3 turns of movement. And Callie was with Zakas way over there, and Yana was way over there, and
Neppy was like, Neppy and Kokenee were at the back because they kept getting pushed out of the storm sphere. Kokenee was the only one managing to stay stable inside the storm sphere, as well as Torren. But Torren was on the other side of the Chaos Elemental, essentially just like punching it in where the equivalent of its kidneys while its back was turned towards facing Kokenee. So Torren's behind. This bit is important. Torren directly almost in melee behind the Chaos Elemental. Kokenee about 45 feet from the Chaos Elemental. Neppy and Kokenee probably also equivalently about 45 feet, but like
different direction.
Like if Kokenee's at like 2 or 3 o'clock, they're at like noon, and then Callie is directly behind them, up in the air with Zakas as she just takes her sword and just drives it in the back. And I remember Len's words for Callie at that point, where she like yelled out Zakas's name as he was starting to like do more damage towards us, and she was just like, Melora sends her regards, and just like sends the sword right down and almost just like cuts him straight down the spine right between his wings. It was fucking amazing. Such a dope Callie kill. It was really good.
So Kokenee is alive after this explosion. Neppy is alive, but barely. Callie is up, and Yana is also barely up. But Kamea is unconscious.
Yeah.
So Callie runs to her, and Neppy uses Bear the Dying to stabilize her, as then sees Torren, who in the explosion was crushed by a boulder. So he had taken the damage of the exploding elemental, and then in that was then hit by the debris of the explosion.
Again, and crushed beneath a boulder.
Yeah.
And like Adam, I think, had been making death saves, but not out like, or he and Tim had been communicating that he'd been making death saves, but that wasn't like outright at the table, so we didn't know how bad it was.
Mhm.
So like Neppy is like running because Grave Clerics can do Spare the Dying as a bonus action. That's part of our class. Spare the Dying is a bonus action, and it's a 30-foot range rather than touch. So Neppy is like, I have like 7 hit points at this point, and I am like, Neppy is prone. She like gets up, she like hand out Spare the Dying as Callie like fly like beaming her way towards Kamea, and Neppy is just running towards Torren, who she sees crushed under this rock. Did you want me to say this part, or do you want this part?
You can go for it.
Okay. So Neppy gets to Torren. She kneels down next to him, and he is like, equivalently, like mechanically, he's dead. But in that moment, like, he's clinging on to life, essentially. Like,
Yeah.
there is a ragged breath coming over him. And Neppy, like, reaches into her bag to grab the diamonds. And Torren grabs her hand and stops her and puts a necklace in her hand. It looks like a small girl's necklace, like the necklace for a young girl. It's got like a leaf and like a gem of some kind on it. And he shakes his head as he exhales his last breath in front of her, and he dies. And she's shaking, knowing what he's asked her. So as Kokenee is running up, he sees Neppy put the diamonds on his chest, take out salt and copper coins, and she uses gentle repose quickly on him, and she collapses on top of him, weeping. And like I was crying. I was a fucking wreck. Just like lying, like Neppy is lying on top of Torren. I could barely get words out about what Neppy was doing. So Kokenee runs up and he like puts the diamonds back in Neppy's hand. He's like, can you bring him back? You can bring him back. And she shakes her head and she's like, he asked me not to. And Kokenee's like, what do you mean he asked you not to? And she's like, I remember this line so well. And it was just like, what kind of world is it if I bring him back and take him from his wife and his children and his people simply because I miss him? And so Neppy is just like, they're just like the two of them. She just like crumples into him, still holding these diamonds, and the both of them are just like sitting in pain next to Torren, who is dead. Neppy knowing
You
that
should
she's
bring him back. Should bring him back with resurrection now.
Chatwater will get there.
Chatwater.
We've talked about that
so many times, and I will
bring his whole family back. That's campaign 2. We all play. Adam plays Torren, and we all play his family and extended family.
Mhm.
Shoddy crazy uncle who hasn't been talked about.
Like Wrigley Brothers circus style, circus family.
And so the two of them are just reeling here, and in that moment, the heads of Sindril and Zakas are collected. Neppy everyone kind of comes in, and
time to add to my skull collection.
Still considering her prophecy, and I think it was I think it was Callie or Yana who walked over to the shards where the shards were taking a look at them, and she watches as the shards coalesced into this amulet, and they seem to they create this small amulet shape, and this is the Chaos Talisman, which we now carry and use to plane shift all the time. So looking to Kokenee, she says, he's still in gentle repose, I have to let him go. And not necessarily asking his permission, but basically being please don't make me do this alone. I don't want to do this by myself. So she says, I release you, Torren Blackwater, son of Caradoc and the last Caraxian. And may Nephthisiket guide your journey, and may Arathis welcome you home. And with that, they both take the coins off of his eyes, essentially releasing him from gentle repose and actually letting him die.
So how did he end up in hell?
He's not in hell. Adam just
Well,
likes to make that joke all the time.
Sean likes to make that joke too, and I'd like to expand upon it because before we met dear old Torren, I mean, he was a soldier for the Caraxian Empire.
Yes.
And we haven't really gotten into it, but the Caraxian Empire famously big on war crimes, and none
Not true.
quite. I mean, I don't know. Were you there? But Torren drinks for a reason.
That's right.
He misses his family, but he also sees the faces of all those innocents that he punched to death.
Sure.
And you have to be real close to punch someone to death. You have to be real close. So you see it.
You see it, you smell it. He was training his kids to follow in the family line. So, they were young, but definitely corrupted.
Absolutely.
That weighs on his soul as well. As it will for eternity in the hells. But at least they're together.
But for the record, canonically, no, Torren is not in hell. And we know that.
He's in a hell of his own making, if you think
sure.
He's not in the hells, but philosophically speaking, he doesn't believe he deserves to be in, the
good place that he is. There we go.
Yeah, but he's also in hell.
So
people are poking him with little sticks.
So as of this point, we realize that we can't stay here. The city is still this. There are still parts of the city that are on fire. Everything is still crumbling. So we take his body to the temple of Nephthisiket, and Neppy, almost on autopilot, starts preparing his body. It's just she's a wreck at this point, and she falls back on what she knows, the work. She just is okay, I have to do this. This is my job. I have released him, and now I have to prep him for burial. And so she starts going, and Kokenee is standing there also realizing, and she stops, and she's like, what am I doing? He doesn't follow my God. Kokenee's right here. So Neppy almost steps away and is like, Kokenee, I'm so sorry. This is your job. And Kokenee looks at her and he's like, I don't know what I'm doing. And she's like, do whatever you think is right, and you instruct me how to help. The use of my temple is yours. Go for it. Why don't you take it from here, Matt?
Sure. So Kokenee sort of prays to Arathis for a little bit, and then tries his best at funeral rites. So he ends up setting Torren down with all of his equipment placed around him, and then painting with gold paint in iconography of Arathis on his body. They transport him to a burial place on a hill within the city that overlooks the ocean. Which now, later on, is the location of the Temple of Arathis.
Sick.
Yeah, we bury him and say some words about him as Kokenee places the last amount of dirt on the grave. Neppy has a vision of him rising up out of the grave and feels his essence pass through her, and walking through her towards a light behind her, welcome homed by Arathis.
Yeah. And this
Krager,
is all the same session. So we're still reeling from Torren's death. Adam is Adam is there in the room
Mhm.
watching us all
Probably
process.
eating something ridiculous.
I mean, I don't.
Like
I
a
don't.
wheel of cheese or
There was so many wheels of cheese and bags of spinach at my
Ugh.
house afterwards. But yeah, like he's sitting there. He's crying, watching us all just weep and go through all of this. There was not a dry eye in my, just like a bunch of adults on a Sunday night. Tim was crying. We were all. It was a lot. It was big. Yeah. Go ahead. Keep going,
So
Matt.
Krager then places a headstone in the shape of a cog. It reads, "Here lies Torren Blackwater, father, son, and friend to more than he knew." And as we're walking back from the grave, Kokenee has a vision from Arathis of the temple that he will build for Arathis and the city in hundreds of years with her help and ingenuity. On the way back down, we're offered condolences and care from the townsfolk. And as we walk back with Kamea saying that we can stay at her house, we're asked who we are, and we take Torren's name as our new party name, which is Blackwater.
Yeah. That was all one session. It was like a
pretty chill
Woof.
session.
yeah. Yeah. So that was like, and I think that was something like we as a group of people just sat in silence for like 10 minutes after that happened in my living room and just shared like before everyone left for the evening. It was just like, we have to be okay and sit here with this for a couple minutes. Yeah. And it's, of course, I don't even know what the drives home were like for people because like it was at Tim and I's house. It was a lot. Yeah. So that takes us to the end of session 23. So session 24, this one is called Following the Storm Without the Calm. Matt, did you want to take it or do you want me to take it?
I'll grab it here.
Go for
as
it.
we head into the city, Neppy peels off from the group and goes around town, offering prayer and last rites for as many people as she can. She finds her way back to Kamea's house eventually. Before we go rest that night at Kamea's, when Neppy returns, Kokenee finds her outside in a moment of overwhelming grief, one that she didn't want to show the party, and they hold each other in their pain. They're in anguish over Torren, and she reads to him the letter, and she reads it. She asks to read him the letter, and she reads it to him, translating it from Infernal. He tells her that he reciprocates the feelings, and they say their first "I love yous." They start sharing a room that night. At that point,
Yeah. So they're like, why? We had individual rooms prepared for us as Kameas, and it was basically just like Neppy was like, no, I don't need that over there. I don't want to be farther from you than I need to be.
It was that classic scene from the movie. One room or two, and then they look at each other and they, what?
One? Yeah.
What?
Yeah, which was it was a cool moment. And like when so you had talked about the letter, Sean, from the previous session. So like before we went into the Battle of the Docks, I had a copy of the letter that was written out in like a cipher. Essentially, it was in an infernal font that I had found and like written out as like a 1-to-1 cipher, like
Wingdings.
Sure, like an infernal, dark, devilish
Wingdings is infernal, dark, and devilish.
Sure. So I gave that to Matt, and then in the previous session, when they were on the Temple of Cord, Tim was had made us roll some checks to like translate the first couple lines. So basically, I said to Matt, I was like, "There you go, there's the cipher," and he's like, "Do I get to translate it now?" And I was like, "Just wait, just wait, just wait, just wait." So then, yeah, I was, because Neppy's intention, I think I've talked about this before, was to teach him Infernal so that he could read the letter himself, so that they would spend more time together. It wouldn't be like I am dumping literally all of these feelings onto you in a moment. And so you can learn it, we'll spend more time together, and then you'll be able to read the letter for yourself and understand what it means. And then at the end of this, basically from what happened at the previous session, Neppy was like, there's no time. Like, one of us could be dead tomorrow. So I'm going to read, I want to read this to you if you'll let me. So she read it to him. Yeah, it was cool. And I know, Sean,
Yeah.
you'd had a request for the letter. Did you want to read it? Did you want to hear it?
Yeah. Go for it if you got it,
I
which I know you do.
I do. Give me a sec here.
Can you read it to us in Infernal, please?
Nope.
Yeah, please.
Nope.
Please.
What about please though?
What about please? I'll read it.
won't.
Put it this way. I'll read it to you in Neppy's accent. That's what
That's
you'll get.
great. That's a fair.
What does Neppy's
I'll
accent
admit.
sound like in Infernal? Like, because Infernal is like a guttural, like demon language.
No, in canon, I have it so that it's almost like Infernal is more of a like it sounds quite musical. Like the more guttural language would be abyssal. That would be the darker language of it. Infernal is quite it's like a musical. I've taken essence from Arabic and Turkish words to create some of the words of Nepi's language, but yeah, to me it's quite like a musical, uh, melodic language. There would be more.
Like Welsh.
Oh sure, yeah. Sure. Welsh. Let me just find it here. Sorry, one sec.
The
one
famously
sec.
musical language.
I don't know. I know the accent is. I love the Welsh accent. It's super
Yeah.
musical.
Good.
Yeah.
It's
Good.
very silly.
I'm sorry. I am. Matt, maybe while I find this thing, maybe you can speak a bit about what was going on for Kokenee while this was happening.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a very fun part of the game, sort of in the way that Kokanee had so much going on at this point, where you're like, oh, I just buried my friend because I'm now the high priest of a religion that I didn't know existed like days ago, and now there's this, person that I have interest in for the first time, basically ever. Um, it was very like excited homeschool kids.
Oh yeah, big homeschool energy.
Um, but yeah, it was really nice. But another part of it that was sort of scary and not so nice, and it's a little bit later, I guess, a touch, but he sort of knew that when her prophecy was done, she was supposed to go back to Felenis. And so he's like, am I falling for somebody who is about to leave?
Classic homeschool kid mistake. You meet someone at camp.
Yeah.
You fall in love and you maintain a long distance relationship.
Yeah.
You're like, we'll meet at camp and Easter, and oh boy.
Yeah. So it was like, we've met at camp. Does she have to go home? She lives across town. Like, I have a girlfriend now, guys. Like, she's real. I met her at camp. She goes to a different school.
Okay, I found it. You guys ready?
Who are you telling this to? You're at homeschooled.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. I have two
your dad's
shirts,
like your dad's like, you don't have a girlfriend. You're like, I swear, Dad.
Okay.
It's actually, I've got two shirts. It's me and the shirt that were there trying to convince the other shirt that didn't make it that day.
I like to think that Kokenee probably
Sentient
ruined a shirt on the day of the was
Nothing that can't be mended.
But then, yeah, we just mend it.
We just mend it and we clean it. Okay. Oh my god, I have to read this in Neppy's accent, not in game. Okay. To my constant guidance, my brightest star, and my dearest heart. I can hear you. Oh my god, that's not her voice. Okay, here we go. I can hear you denying these epithets already. That you could never hold them, never carry them, that they could never apply to you. That you have never and could never and will never deserve them, especially not from me. To that, dear one, I say, too late. You are all these things and thousands more. You contain multitudes, and it cannot be helped. It was my hope that this would be a way for me to adequately express my feelings, but now it seems too small. That these words could carry the gravity and depth and weight of what it means to care for you. That a quick scratch of a pen on parchment could fix love, and reading it would permeate its way into your heart. It seems impossible, yet here we are. The trials we face are many, and I find I am often traveling through them in a daze if I am not careful. I am so far from home and so far from anything familiar to me. In a few short years, my understanding of the world has increased exponentially, and yet I still know nothing. You could fill novels with the things I do not know. My first 2 years outside the temple, I was surrounded by more people than ever before, yet I could feel nothing but longing. Longing to bring honor to my goddess, longing for days beyond this prophecy. This still doesn't sound like her voice because I can't hear myself in the side, so I
It
apologize
sounds
if
great
it's,
to me,
if
Em.
it's
You're doing
off.
so good.
Thank you. But there was an unknown yearning, something she was not part of. This was a longing for someone to fill a space that had fallen open in my heart, a space I did not know existed for so many years before. This was never something I thought that would happen to me. I am a daughter of prophecy, woven into a path that was designed for me and now cannot exist without me. I would lay down my life to see that the end of days foretold does not come to fruition. So what if my heart lay empty? Nowhere in the prophecy was it said that the high priestess of Nepthiseket could fall in love. But, like you, prophecies contain multitudes. There was no mention of our group, no mention of your goddess and her freedom, no mention of the chaos that stemmed from 4 rather than 1. But my goddess is wise and evermore. She knew I could not do this alone and sent me the best aid she could. 3 gifts beyond imagining. First, the gift of companionship, of camaraderie and friendship, to those who would care for me beyond duty and penance. Second, the gift of knowledge, those to teach me of the world and its history, so that I may be the arbiter of the divine balance that I am meant to be. And finally, like you, I was bestowed the gift of choice. I have been given the choice to love, the choice to give myself not only to the cause, but to another, if I wish to the one who may fill the chasm of my soul and stem its unraveling. With this gift comes a sense of free will unlike I have ever known, and with this gift comes endless possibility for me to walk my own history rather than act according to pre-divined rule and scripture. But with great choice comes great uncertainty. The future we run into is the future we run headlong towards is unknown and ever changing, and this will take you weeks to understand this letter fully. The words will ring just as true when you are able to read them in my ancestral tongue. You are the blood flowing through my fingers in ritual. You are the lightning strike across an endless plain. You are the earth on which I travel, foundation on which to write our circumstance. I will stand steadfast in your darkness, unbowed, unwavering, welcoming. I will burn like oil in a lamp for you, casting light into every corner until you can see what I can see. I will let nothing burn it out, no prophecy, no sultan, no grave. You are my choice, and I would be yours, if you would have me. That was it.
So good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she reads him that and is just like waiting for him to process that. And then I can imagine there's a lot going on in his head about that. And then he tells her, he's like, yeah, I feel the same way.
Sick. I'm in. That's great.
Sick,
I
I'm
believe
Cool.
the
Ditto.
exact words were ditto, dude.
Yeah, ditto did. Yeah. And
Is
so
that sure or is that a joke?
That's a joke.
that's
That's a joke.
absolutely
Oh,
a
okay.
joke.
I think that's a good line. That's funny.
Yeah.
Ditto, dude.
If I remember right, he
Let's
basically tells her that like there will come a day where I have to make choices, and if you are the choice, you are the choice I have to make. I will make the same choice thousands of times over again. Yes. Like, and then they're just like, okay, we're together now. Okay, we don't know what this is, but we're together. That's it. And then I think he asks her. He was like, "Are you going to go home? Do you have to go home?" And she was like, "I'm sure I'll have to go home at some point, but I do so much more here than I ever could behind the walls of Philenis. So if I go, I want all of you to come with me. I want you to come with me." Saying that to him. And I think that's where they leave it. at that point, because there was no call. Like, I think I expected immediately following the Battle of Gatestone Keep for Neppy, for when Neppy checked in with them, to be like, yep, Hade says that you have to go back to Philenis. And obviously not. So the next morning, did you want to take it, Matt, or do you want me to?
Sure, I got it.
Go for it.
The next morning, we learn that Admiral Kazim is going to be returning from Svel-En. King Evard was wounded, but the city was well defended and the fleet was defeated. The fleet are now returning from Svel-En and are still trying to hunt down the Queen's killer, Mira N, Evard's daughter.
Which we know is not true because Mira is in the scar.
Mhm.
And we don't know who it was at this point, but we surmise that someone has disguised themselves like Mira, which we learned later was Sindral doing. Like, she was the one who had disguised herself like Mira.
On the council, Kamea, Andaz, Wendell, and Kazim remain. The rest had been killed.
Wendell, fan favorite, voice of reason.
It's been around for so long.
Neppy communes with Nephthisicat, asking if she is to return to Philenis, but Nephthisicat wishes her to stay with Blackwater and Kokenee. Neppy asks of Torren, but Nephthisicat says that he is beyond her sight. We go to a council meeting with Kamea, and they take stock of what has happened. Kazim is on his way back to Wolfreen and will return with the fleet in a few days. We are gifted a keep by the council, and
Blackwater
that
Keep.
it can be renovated to our wishes.
That's our house.
We return to Kamea's house briefly and are informed of the pyrite in the bad bag of golding.
Yeah, I think that how that went was like, we essentially come back from this council meeting. We're still reeling about everything. And Neppy goes to be like, Kamea, we're going to be staying here. She's like, had offered to have us stay there until our keep was ready. And we were like, okay, this is great. I was like, please let us contribute to food and costs and stuff like that. So we go to take some money out of the bag, and Gregor, who is with us, looks at us and goes, this is pyrite. And we're like, what? And then there's a moment where Neppy just dumps the bag of golding onto the table, and she's like, can you check all of it? And it's all of it is pyrite, or like fools. Anything that is gold is, the gems are fine, but all of the idols and everything is all pyrite. It's all fool's gold. And there's like priceless artifacts of Nephthisicat and Arathis are gone.
Yep.
Yeah. Neppy's devastated.
Yeah.
And we know how that worked out.
In the money
Yes,
hole.
it's
Yeah,
fine.
that's fine.
Kokenee
I
and
like the
Spooky.
fact that
Sorry.
Kamea would have been like, sure, yeah, you can help pay, and then you're like, Gregor's like, it's all fake, and she would have been like, you guys trying to pay me with fake money. They offer to help, and then they bust out counterfeit shit.
They're a fucking scam artist.
Like, who are these
That's
guys?
us.
Well, apparently Tim had been rolling insight or like perception or investigation checks for each of the shopkeepers that we had been paying with this money for all of the things since we had gotten the bag of golding from Zamlux, which had been a long time. This was in Svel-En, in the like beholder's lair. We found this bag, and they had all failed. None of them had noticed that it was counterfeit. So we could have noticed that so earlier, but nobody did. We didn't notice at all. So a shock to the party, for sure.
So Kokenee and Spooky go for a walk through the town after the meeting. We go to a magic shop, the Mystics, and meet Tova. She agrees to spend the afternoon taking a look at the bag as she's seen them before. We can come back the next day. Kokenee sells Delnis's shield to her for some big coin,
Nice.
which he gives to Spooky for her spellbook. People tend to follow them around, hoping for a glimpse of the people who saved Wolfreen.
Yeah.
They then go and get a platinum band from a jeweler and look for another one where they meet Urkin,
Urkin!
a dwarf
Urkin.
obsessed with platinum and trying to buy more, but we have no luck finding any. He was buying it for over its fair value.
I think
Yeah.
it's funny that you can now see, looking back at it, that Money Hole was definitely the next arc Tim was trying to force you guys to go down, because it's like, oh, this money bag doesn't work. Also, here's a guy named Erkin with the platinum, and you guys were like, nah, this is not anything, and then just
So-
went and did something else.
Yeah, so I believe Tim was saying that the finding Erkin was at this point was because we rolled a natural 20 on investigation to find a person to buy platinum from.
Because Kokenee wanted to make Neppy a band for Warding Bond.
Erkin was a goof that
Yeah.
then goofed all of us.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was a fun jest that then stopped being fun very quickly.
Came around to bite us in the butt. Our fun
Very
all
quickly.
stopped.
It was like
Yeah.
a long time later.
Yeah.
Neppy and Callie, on the other hand, go for a walk on the other side of town. They talk about tattoos and meet some children in town who saw them the day before. Callie gets a tattoo apprenticeship with Augie
Otto.
Bernbach.
Augie, hell yeah.
So she's like, Neppy, I've always wanted to tattoo. And Neppy's like, okay, let's find you a tattoo shop. I was
Yeah,
like,
carpe diem, let's go.
I was like, do you want a tattoo right now? She's like, no, I want to become proficient with tattooing. And I'm like, that's dope. Because Neppy's got, her tattooing is not tattoos per se, it's like metal inlaid to her skin. So she's like, that's wonderful, that's great, let's go find you a tattoo shop. You won't have tattoos like these ones, but like, let's go, because Callie's got tattoos. She's like, let's go find you a shop. So we find the shop, we go to Augie's, and she manages to talk her way into apprenticeship with Augie. He's like, yeah, whenever you're in town, you want to come do some tattoos? Cool. Okay. Great.
Mhm.
Why don't you keep going, Matt?
Yeah, so as they are walking through the city, they meet a young man wearing heavier armor and carrying a spear. He's youthful, wearing red and blue, and he introduces himself as Finin Aodghanis of House Aodghanis from Wolfreen, and is honored to meet us. He was in the group that fought at Croden's Cross, and his father is a high-ranking military officer, and he was proud to fight alongside us. He would be proud to fight alongside us in any way we can. He offers to accompany us through the city, and the Neppy and Callie agree, and they invite him over for dinner.
So at this point, it's like Adam has jumped in as his character, and we're like, okay. And when the way that Tim introduced it, he's like, for a second, Neppy, you think it's Torren. He's like, same haircut, holding a spear, silhouetted by the sun. And there was a moment for me as Neppy where I was just like, is this divine intervention? Like, is Torren just back? I was like, I didn't raise him I didn't bring him back, but is he just here?
Mm-hmm.
Because we had gone a week and I had not been sure what Adam's character decisions were about whether he was rolling a new character or whether Torren was just coming back in some way, like narrative way. And then he introduces, and then we get closer and we see that it is this young boy, like a 15, 16-year-old boy. And we're just like, okay. And so I think, and it's like, obviously it's like Adam's new character, so I'm not going to be like, no, we don't want to hang out with you. But it's just also like trying to find a way for him to come into the party. And he's like, may I accompany you through the city? And we're like, sure. Okay. Why don't you come to dinner? Like, I'd love to hear about, your experience in Croden's Cross. Why don't you come to dinner? And we're heading back there now. Would you like to come join us? And he's like, to have dinner with all of you, with the group that saved Wolfreen? And we're like, I mean, sure. Like, why not at this point? And I think for me, something that was going through my head as Neppy is like, Neppy feels incompetent. She feels like she has failed. She didn't keep her friend alive. She's still reeling from the grief of that. It has not even been 24 hours since we've put Torren in the ground. And here is someone, and maybe it's a bit selfish for her, but here is someone who looks at her like she's not falling apart.
Mm.
And so she's like, okay, it's a big deal to meet someone who is your, I guess not your hero, but like someone you look up to. So she wants to give this young man that. She's like, okay, I don't want you to hold the grief that I hold. You don't need to see the grief. You don't need to see me falling apart. Why don't you come with us for dinner? Even if it's just a quick visit, just come on. So we go.
And it wasn't just a quick visit.
Go ahead, Matt. Let's talk about what happened.
Yeah, so they bring him back, and basically Kokenee, I mean all of them had just lost and buried their friend. And so Kokenee is back at home, and Neppy and Callie come back, basically from how he saw it, being like, look, we found a young, basically Torren, and he's asked to accompany us for a little bit. And Kokenee was pretty upset about that. He had just buried his friend and really didn't want to bury another person, and was quite upset about the idea of like basically having a Torren lookalike just sort of coming to accompany us for a while. And so Kokenee gets very upset at his presence, and they end up fighting each other outside in the street for a little bit. They both take a few hits. Neppy is quite frustrated, and her and Kokenee argue about it as they're grieving Torren. And that was quite a lot of sort of difficult conflict.
Yeah.
They later in that night talk through it and settle it down and are all right about it, but that was like a very difficult moment for, I think, most of the party.
Totally. It was a hard reality to face, that it's like, okay, our friend is dead, Torren is dead, and here is someone who almost idolizes what Torren did and idolizes us and is a boy. This is a young boy.
Yeah.
And here we are trying to make him feel welcome. And I know Neppy was just like, felt like she was just trying to do a nice thing for another person. And then to kind of salve her own hurting, and then to see the two of them fight in the street, she got so frustrated, and she was just like, if you kill him, I am going to bring him back. And I was like, you need to bring me his body and I will bring him back if you kill him. And Kokenee got really upset about that, because he was just like, you've just told me you love me no matter what, and you're not able right now to handle my grief and my pain. And Neppy's like, she's like, you're right. Like, I wasn't able to handle it. I've got my own grief, and your anger was so overwhelming. And it's almost like they're battling with the fact that, like, I remember one of Kokenee's lines was like, I won't bury a boy. I won't do it. I will not bury a young man with his entire life ahead of him. And Neppy he's like, what, is he coming with us now? Is he going to just be part of our party? And Neppy's like, I don't have the power to say that. I don't have the power to do that. So it was a bit like, these fresh new feelings as well as grief, and they're still trying to manage all of this. So it was a lot, but they sort through it eventually, and they reconcile and are like, okay, we give Torren a chance, or give Finin a chance, give him some space, and try and give him the childhood, or the care that neither of us got, in a different way. Yeah. It was hard. It was a hard shift having Finin come into the party. It was a big shift for the entire party, for sure. And then
what happened?
well, this was almost the end of the session, and that was almost it. And then later that evening, Neppy sends to Hade and essentially she's like, the only person here is Softly. Please send more acolytes and more priestesses to Wolfrain. Like, there is work here for us in the city. Please do this. Please, can you send over? And Hade says, of course, there will be priestesses and acolytes on the next boat over. So we're like, great. So then she sends to Kern, and is just like, he and Mira are surviving. They're alive, but they're now owned by a being named Zamarod. They don't know what type of being he is, but we know Zamarod is a Dao. Or is Zamarod a giant?
Zamarod Was a giant.
Is a giant. Zamrod was a giant.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And she's like, she promises him that we're coming soon. We just need a little more time to deal with the council in the city, because like pressure had been coming on pretty hot on us. And we said we'll come for you as soon as we can. We'll be We'll be there soon. And we rest for the night. And that is it.
That's it.
We did it.
We did it.
Elemental Chaos Arc. We did it.
Chatwater,
took
we
like,
got there.
We
took
got
like
there.
2 weeks longer than we wanted, but
Maybe 3.
Matt
We
was
are
supposed
beholden
to
to no one. We are
Matt
our
was supposed to
own
come for one
show.
episode. He's been here for a month and a half.
Thank you,
Much
Matt.
like Finin.
Matt, also big thank you to joining us for this arc.
Thank you so much for having me. It's
Oh
been
my
lovely.
gosh, so nice. So nice to have another person who was there. And we're so close to meeting letters. We're so
Yeah.
close.
So close.
We have like,
Very
let me see if I
excited.
can find here. Let me see if I can
It's like
find
you go to the Scar. I think there's like 2 sessions.
maybe
and
2
then
or
it's
3
like,
sessions. And
And
then
who's this fucking guy? Who's this handsome devil?
who's this handsome Minotaur? Yeah, it was right after, because we have 2 or 3 episodes. We have the second Adonis one shot that happened that we will talk about, and then the next session after we get into the pit fighting, and talk about that, and then we meet our dear old letters. So we're almost there.
And Blackwater's complete.
Blackwater is complete as it is. Yeah. Wow, we got there, you guys. Chatwater.
We did it.
We
So proud of
got there.
us.
So proud of us. Only took 7 parts. I did say that this arc was a big one.